Thank you very much for taking your time to be with us today, and I would like to welcome you to Canada Vietnam AI Summit. Today, we are very pleased to welcome all of you to our event, and our event is proudly hosted by Mila Institute and FPT Software in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the diplomatic ties between Vietnam and Canada. It is our honor to have our distinguished delegates today with us, and together we will discover the latest advancements in artificial intelligence and witness the renewal of the strategic partnership between Mila Institute and FPT Software. As we begin, please allow me to introduce our distinguished delegates of today's event. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Trần Trí Thành, Chartered Affairs, Embassy of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam in Canada, who is joining the event online. Yes, he will give a speech later. Dr. Quỳnh Trần, Head of Vietnam Trade Office in Canada, Embassy of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam in Canada. I think she probably not here yet. She's okay. Mr. Bezat Babakani, Consulate General of Canada to Vietnam. Professor Yoshua Benjo, Founder and Scientific Director of Mila and Ivado. Dr. Truong Binh, Chairman of FPT Corporation. Dr. Phong Nguyen, Chief AI Officer, FPT Software. Mr. Roger Legare, Chairman of Canada-Vietnam Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Nam Hoang, CEO of Canada-Vietnam Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Đặng Trần Phương, Senior Executive Vice President, FPT Software, CEO of FPT Software America. Mr. Nguyễn Lâm Phương, CEO of FPT Canada. And special welcome to all the attendees from FPT, Mila, and all of our partners joining us at the event today. Our event is hosted at Mila, but we're also having it live streamed on FPT Software's fan pages so that we will have a global audience to join us. So big applause to everyone again.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frederick Lauren. I'm a Senior Director of Partnership at Mila. We're super happy to have you here. It is my great pleasure to introduce Mila and the first speaker for the day. Founded in 1993 by Dr. Yoshua Benjo, Mila is recognized globally for its expertise and significant contributions to the advancement of artificial intelligence. This would not have been possible without the incredible work done by Yoshua and all of the Mila researchers in the last 30 years. The next speaker has also been crucial as an architect in making Mila what it is today, the largest AI academic research lab in the world. Please join me to welcome Mr. Stéphane Letourneau, Executive Vice President, who will share a few words of introduction.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. I stand before you today to discuss an exciting collaboration between FPT and Mila, which has spanned over 3 years and has yielded remarkable achievements in the field of artificial intelligence. And today I'll take you briefly through the journey of our partnership, highlight some of our accomplishments, express our gratitude to key individuals, and unveil our plans for the future. So one of the notable successes is our collaboration on joint research projects. The collaboration with Yoshua Benjo and his team about System 2 is one example. Joint research with SIAMAC about massive point cloud, which was accepted at ICLR 2023 workshop, is another. In addition to this, AI for Code project has achieved recognition, with one paper being accepted at the ACL 2023 conference. Apart from research, our partnership has also focused on training and exchange programs. We have had the privilege of hosting 3 FSoft AI residents in our deep learning reinforcement learning school, fostering knowledge sharing and collaboration. And currently, we are delighted to have Van Han, one of FPT's AI residents, visiting Mila for the summer. I believe she is present with us today, and I extend a warm welcome to her. Recognizing the value and expertise and knowledge, 8 Vietnamese AI residents have been part of our collaborative journey. And this is a two-way process. FPT also employed a Mila intern recruited through the Mila Career Fair and is in the process of recruiting a second one, solidifying our commitment to talent exchange and development. Furthermore, our collaboration extends beyond research and training, as we have engaged in strategic discussions with regards to the FPT AI Research Center in Quy Nhon. Back in June 2021, I personally spoke with representative of Binh province, and this paved the way to Frédéric Dorin's visit to Quy Nhon in April 2022, where he met them in person. And as an aside, the video testimony of this visit of Frédéric in Vietnam is just an incredible thing to see, and is a testimony to the culture of hospitality, I think, that is deep-rooted in Vietnam. So thank you very much for the way you hosted Frédéric. It is worth mentioning that FPT is the only group with whom Mila currently shares this level of interaction about an AI research center, highlighting the uniqueness and strength of our partnership. We have also joined forces to organize events and visits that showcase our collaborative achievements. In December 2021, Mila had the pleasure to welcome FPT chairwoman, Ms. Aha Ha. In June 2022, we held a FPT Mila conference, bringing together experts, researchers, and industry professionals. In the past, we've also collaborated on the AI for Vietnam event in 2020 and the one-year celebration event with Yoshua and Dr. Binh in 2021. Last year, we hosted a drug discovery webinar with Yoshua again, and this year, we are proud to celebrate the 50-year bilateral diplomatic relationship between Vietnam and Canada. So at this moment, I would like to express my gratitude to 2 key individuals, besides Yoshua, who have played a significant role in fostering and maintaining this partnership. Firstly, a special thanks to Dr. Binh for his visit to Mila and his renewed confidence. His enthusiasm in training the younger Vietnamese generation is remarkable, and he goes above and beyond to inspire them and empower them with critical skills for the future. And secondly, a heartfelt thank you to Phong for his dedication. Where are you, Phong? Oh, there you are. For his dedication to the FPT-Mila collaboration. His unwavering commitment has been instrumental in our success, and both your support and trust have been invaluable to us. Looking forward, I'm thrilled to announce that we are embarking on another 3-year partnership. One of our focus will be on the responsible application of large language models, current subject of some discussion. As part of this commitment, both FPT and Mila will contribute to guidelines, best practices, and ethical standards that promote transparency, fairness, accountability, and privacy in AI applications. In conclusion, FPT and Mila have had a collaboration that has thrived over the last 3 years, yielding groundbreaking research, fostering talent exchange, and organizing impactful joint events. As we look to the future, we are excited to renew our commitment and to drive responsible AI application through research, collaboration, and ethical practices. Thank you for your attention, and let us embark on this next chapter of innovation and progress together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rethinking, for the welcome remarks. Next, allow me to introduce FPT Chairman, Dr. Truong Binh. Dr. Binh is one of the founders of FPT Corporation, and he has been leading the company to become the #1 Vietnam's IT firm. And he's well known for his dedication to the country's development as well. So please welcome on stage Dr. Truong Binh to share some words with us.
Professor Yoshua, Benjo, professors, doctors, representative from government, enterprise, friends, researchers, thank you very much to let me being here. I thought I escaped the hot weather from Hanoi in Quebec, but I was wrong. Same. Maybe here is hotter. But anyway, I have the first touch to Professor Benjo. We worked for 3 years. We talked so many times. Our people came here for residency, but first time I can touch you. Thank you very much. That's the reason why I came here. Okay, passing to you the greeting from 60,000 FPT staff from 30 countries, because they're looking for this meeting. AI is so critical for us. Now we about the just very simple things. One word, happiness. We are companion with the governments, not only Vietnam, another government, to make the people happier. We try to make the education better, healthcare is better, more safety, less jams. And that is what we're serving for countries. And we using AI to do it. And we also would like to make the government officials also happier. No need to do boring work, to collecting document, to writing report. Just do what really they need. And the same thing, we also do digital transformation for many enterprises around the world. And coming to Quebec, we just have chance to talk to few people, but we should bring the talent from Vietnam, bring our joy research to serve enterprise of Canada to do better things, to more profit, operation costs down and so on. And addressing the cooperation with Mila, we sharing the spirit of inclusivities and responsibilities of AI. That's critical for us. And we want to invest more youth to research, to increase the capabilities of Vietnam and using those resources to serve the world. Thank you very much for great cooperation for last 3 years. Okay, time, 3 minutes, I think I got also. Okay, no, thank you. I was quite disciplined. I keep the time. And thank you very much for listening. And we have, okay, one last dream. We talked so many times. I dream some days, Mila set up the affiliate branch in Quy Nhơn, where the young people love just math. They don't have anything. They are very poor. They don't have any development there chance. Only AI. Please come there, and I will bring all the talent of Vietnam to you to leverage our core competencies and serve the whole world for happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Binh, for your inspiring speech. Professor Benjo, I think you have some chance to share the vision with Dr. Binh in the past. So may I have, what do you think about his sharing?
Well, I'm enthusiastic about the prospect. Should I go here? Yes. And about the collaboration up to now, I must say, if you had asked me 3 years ago, it wasn't obvious to make something like this work. And I'm grateful for the team here and in FPT that made it work, because it's very much aligned with my vision and my values. As you know, when we have made Mila an independent organization, we have created a set of mission statements and goals. And right from the beginning, the idea of democratizing the science of AI and to make society benefit from AI thanks to its deployment has been very, very central. And for many years, I've been active in the ways that I could to try to connect Mila to developing countries, to bring young people from developing countries here, to make it easy for researchers here in Montreal to go in those countries as well and participate. And yeah, let me say a few more words about the projects that I was involved with. So in my group, we had the pleasure of working with several interns from Vietnam, sent by FPT, and they worked within the objectives, I think Stefan mentioned, of System 2. So what is that System 2? Okay, so you got System 1 and System 2, that's what it's called. System 1 is your intuition, and System 2 is your ability to reason, with your thoughts, project yourself, be more coherent, reason, plan, understand causality. So the project was about causality. Right now in AI, how to incorporate causal understanding is still a frontier question that people are working on, but we don't have all the answers. So there's a lot of really important research. And in a way, it's connected to the things that we are planning to do for the next 3 years, right? Which have to do with large language models and the next generation of AI systems that can hopefully be better than the ones we have now that sometimes are really impressive, but also they can hallucinate all kinds of crazy things, right? They're lacking this kind of coherence and the kind of understanding of how the world works that humans have. So my time is up. Thank you, everybody, especially the people who came from Vietnam, especially Dr. Binh. It's a very long trip. We are really so glad to have you here. And well, maybe you think it's too hot, but we are happy because it doesn't happen so often. And we are happy to be with you with these sunny days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Benjo. As the largest IT company in Vietnam, FPT and our member companies like FPT Software are making remarkable efforts in AI. May I have your attention on the screen as we go through the company's initiatives in research and development
Embracing artificial
development.
Embracing artificial intelligence in today's rapidly evolving world is not just about keeping up with the times. but leveraging the transformative potential to drive innovation, fuel growth, and shape a better future for businesses where innovation meets excellence. Understanding the importance, FPT Software is dedicated to the adoption of AI technologies to develop comprehensive solutions that revolutionize the business of our clients. With a highly facilitated AI center in Quy Nhon, a leading AI hub of Southeast Asia, partnered with renowned AI institutions like Mila, more than 1,000 AI professionals working on over 190 projects across all capacities of AI and industries, FPT Software has accommodated over 1,000 partners worldwide on their transformation journey. And this is one of the only 2 Vietnamese AI research institutes that have publications at A-Star Conference. From research to application, we harness the power of AI to develop FPT Software AI for Code, our own proprietary language models to improve code productivity and accuracy, and help software developers address programming challenges. Our models include Dosify AI, an AI tool for generating documentation strings and code comments, and CodeVista, an all-in-one coding assistant AI-powered chatbot that leverages natural language processing capabilities to provide contextual information and assistance. We support manufacturers to automate quality control and improve bottom lines by developing Industrial AI, a comprehensive AI solution for smart factories that combines vision, IoT, and sound modules, which helps reduce up to 30% energy consumption and cost, reduce up to 70% inspection labor cost, enhance accuracy rate up to 95%, and speed up the process by 100%. But that is not all. To foster the next generation of AI expert, we invest in nurturing talent through comprehensive training programs, such as FPT AI Residency and AI Camp initiatives. And through the establishment of FPT AI University, Vietnam's first university to provide throughout AI education, where intensive project-based training and access to state-of-the-art facilities is provided. Unleash the transformative power of AI and let FPT Software accompany your business with the limitless possibilities of artificial intelligence. FPT Software, accompany the future.
Joining our event today, it is our honor to have Mr. Trần Trí Thành, Chartered Affairs Embassy of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam in Canada, as our guest. Although he cannot attend in person, Mr. Thành is joining us via Zoom. So I would like to invite Mr. Thành to share a few words with all of us. Please, Mr. Thành.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of His Excellencies, Ambassador of Vietnam to Canada, I'd like to extend his sincere apologies for not being able to join this important event today due to his personal reason. It's also my great honor to speak today. The Embassy of Vietnam in Canada welcomes the idea and tireless efforts shown by FPT Software and Mila Institute, not only in organizing this Canada-Vietnam AI Summit, but also in fostering the cooperation between the 2 countries in high technology areas like AI, bringing the excellent relationship between Vietnam and Canada to a new level in the occasions of the 15th anniversaries of Vietnam-Canada diplomatic relations. New technologies like AI require a multi-phase approach involving various stakeholders. It is crucial to involve experts, policymakers, industry leaders, and the public to ensure a balanced and responsible approach to the AI development and deployment. In this regard, government can play a role in fostering collaboration by providing funding, incentives, and creating a conducive policy environment for AI research and development. Governments can also enact regulation and policies that promote cooperation and data sharing while safeguarding privacy and security. By saying so, the Embassy of Vietnam in Canada, as the representative of government of Vietnam, will do its best to support and facilitate cooperation between the FPT Software and the Mila Institute in particular, and Vietnam, Canada in general in these areas. We do hope that cooperation in AI technology can lead to mutual benefits and advancement for both countries. On behalf of the Embassy of Vietnam and Canada, I would like to send the best wishes for you all and for a very successful event today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tang. Joining us from Vietnam Trade Office, I would like to introduce Dr. Quỳnh Trân, Head of Vietnam Trade Office in Canada, Embassy of Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Please welcome on stage, Ms. Quỳnh.
Mesdames, bonjour messieurs, je suis Quỳnh Trân, conseillère de l'ambassade du Vietnam au Canada et directrice du bureau du commerce du Vietnam au Canada. It's my honor to attend the MOU signing ceremony between Mila and FPT and the Canada-Vietnam AI Summit today. It is important to note that these events happened this year, 2023, a high point in the relation between Vietnam and Canada as we celebrate the 50-year anniversary of the diplomatic relation between our two countries, the 30th year of the Vietnam Trade Office in Canada, and also the second year of the Canada-Vietnam Joint Economic Committee. Our summit today will provide as much as chances for Canadian businesses to understand the performance of Vietnam AI sector, but also the opportunities to connect directly with the Vietnam biggest IT player and also with our AI experts. It will be also a good platform for us to explore new opportunities in Canada's IT and AI market. In fact, the attendance of all of you today has already proved the increasing interest of the IT and AI business community toward the cooperation potential between our two countries. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to take the next few minutes to share with you some of the remarkable figures regarding the overall economic collaboration between Vietnam and Canada. Canada is now the top 10 largest trading partner of Vietnam, and vice versa. Vietnam is your second biggest trading partner in ASEAN. Last year, our two countries' total trade has reached more than 10 billion US dollars. Currently, Canada is our 14th largest investor in Vietnam. Et la semaine passée, nous venons d'accorder la licence d'investissement pour un grand conglomérat vietnamien à investir au Canada avec une valeur de 150 millions de dollars. Et FPT fait part des douzaines vietnamiennes compagnies qui ont investi et témoignent de grands succès au Canada et ont contribué à créer plusieurs emplois bien payés aux Canadiens. Et la coopération dans ce secteur digital contribuera ainsi sans doute au bien-être de nos concitoyens. Canada has been always an attractive destination for our IT companies, thanks to your friendly immigration policy, simple business procedure, respected intellectual properties, good supporting policy for businesses. Quant au Vietnam, nous avons un grand réservoir de talents de technologie informatique et une bonne et bon marché Internet infrastructure. Nous investissons aussi grandement aux activités de recherche et de développement et à la formation de la main-d'œuvre dans le domaine de technologie d'information. Nous avons un grand potentiel pour devenir un pays avancé dans la recherche et l'application de l'intelligence artificielle et nous continuerons à investir pour développer nos capacités afin d'être le plus compétitifs que possible. The current Free Trade Agreement, CPTPP, the upcoming Canada-ASEAN FTA, and the potential digital economic partnership between our two countries will surely contribute to pave the way for the cooperation in AI and IT sector between our businesses. I strongly believe that the MOU and the summit will provide occasion for businesses of both countries to dialogue, share experiences, as well as network to figure out not only business cooperation, but also new pathway to AI development. In this connection, on behalf of the Vietnam Trade Office in Canada, the Ministry of Industry and Trade, I would like to wish Mila and FPT a fruitful collaboration, and I look forward to seeing the success of our summit. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Ms. Quinn. Vous avez un excellent français, à le souligner. And now from the Canadian side, I'd like to invite Mr. Bizad Babakani, Consulate General of Canada to Vietnam, to come on stage and say a few words.
Hello, bonjour, xin chào. C'est tellement bon d'être de retour à Montréal, surtout quand il fait tellement beau. Je viens de Ho Chi Minh Ville, mais je viens de Montréal originellement. I won't speak in French. I think I will continue in English. I also won't talk about artificial intelligence. If I do, it will just show my lack of intelligence. So I will talk about bilateral relationship though, just to complement what was said already. Everyone says Canada and Vietnam enjoy a very strong bilateral relationship. And I really believe that. I think it's super strong and it's also getting stronger all the time. And in 3 minutes, I will tell you why I think so. I look at the relationship through 3 different lenses. I look at trade and investment and commerce, and I include this kind of cooperation under this umbrella as called too. So Canada and Vietnam, as Ms. Quinn said, we use slightly different numbers, but Vietnam is our #1 trading partner in all of ASEAN. In all of ASEAN countries, Vietnam's #1. Trade last year was we used $12 billion Canadian dollars. So a lot of exports from Vietnam, and also some Canadian exports to Vietnam also that are growing. Canada is among the top 10 buyers of products from Vietnam. So you got China, India, Korea, but also Canada. We're very far away, but we buy a lot from Vietnam. Our exports to Vietnam are also growing. Last year alone, they increased by 40%. So I'm going to stop there. Big tool has been CPTPP, the free trade agreement that we have. Now we're working on another free trade agreement as part of the ASEAN, which we think is even better than CPTPP. So when I look at trade and commerce, it's going like this, and I think it's going to continue to go like this, which is fantastic. Number 2, I look at the relationship also through political, diplomatic relationships. And I think that's very important, as we all know. And I'm just going to talk about just one thing, and that's the Indo-Pacific strategy. Some of you may have heard about that. The Indo-Pacific strategy is a game changer for Canada. It basically, if I paraphrase it, it's a policy that says, where do we want to be? Who do we want to be friends with? Where do we want to invest? And you look at the countries that are identified. In all of ASEAN countries, not every country is identified. Vietnam's right there. Vietnam has been identified as a priority country under this Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, this Indo-Pacific strategy also comes with money, which is unusual. It comes with about $2.5 billion in initial stages. That's quite significant, plus human resources and everything else too. So that's fantastic. You look at, again, Vietnam, IPS, wow. Third, I have 1 minute left. I'm only one last point. So now I lost 20 seconds. But also, for me, the most important relationship is actually people-to-people ties. You look at the relationship, we got about 300,000 Canadians of Vietnamese origin. We have about 20,000 Vietnamese who study in Canada. We have about 150,000 Canadians who visit Vietnam every year. We have about 10,000 Vietnamese Canadians in my region alone. And every one of those people counts. Every one of them is helping the relationship become stronger and stronger. I actually include Professor Yoshua and Dr. Binh in that canvas called too. It's this personal relationship when people sit next to each other, shake hands and work on things. For me, that's the most important part. And that's really going very fast as well too. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you so much. And I'm very happy to be part of this.
Merci, Monsieur Babakani. I would now like to invite Monsieur Roger Légaré and Mr. Nam Hong, respectively Chairman and CEO from the Canada-Vietnam Chamber of Commerce, to come on stage and say a few words.
Pour ceux qui veulent avoir la traduction simultanée, je ne sais pas si on vous a mentionné au départ, mais il y avait à l'arrière des casques de traduction simultanée. Je vois le monsieur qui fait des signes là-bas. Alors, c'est peut-être un peu tard pour le mentionner, mais moi, je suis particulièrement privilégié, la Chambre de commerce du Canada-Vietnam veut souhaiter au Dr. Binh et à Benjo, M. Benjo, une relation des plus productrices pour les années qui viennent, puisque depuis 2 ans, je me promène régulièrement avec Truong de FTP dans différentes compagnies pour percer le marché canadien en fonction des transferts de talents entre le Canada et le Vietnam. Je veux remercier la firme de l'Éveillé Conseil qui fait ce travail de façon admirable, de faire les contacts nécessaires pour que le tout devienne une réalité concrète pour les prochaines années. J'ai été invité par Marc Garneau, que tout le monde connaît, et par Mélanie Joly à entretenir ce genre de relations-là, spécialement avec FTP, qui sont venus dès le premier jour avec nous, avec Fong, pour s'assurer qu'ils continueraient à grandir la famille entre le Vietnam et le Canada. That's all I had to say to you today. Actually, the Chamber of Commerce is there since a few years, and we are proud to be part of this wonderful experience of going forward with the artificial intelligence. We don't know much about it. We read about it. We find out that it could be a very productive type of things for the years to come, but some people are scaring us to death about what it will do if we don't take care of it properly. So that being said, thank you again, and have an enjoying first day to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Legare. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce the partnership signing ceremony between FPT and Mila. The partnership between the two companies, the two institutions started in 2020, and the two sides have been actively collaborating in research and development and talent development in AI. Today, FPT and Mila would like to extend the partnership for another 3 years, in particular, strengthening the guidelines, best practices, and ethical standards that will promote the responsible use of artificial intelligence. May I introduce to come on stage for the signing, Dr. Truong Binh, Chairman of FPT Corporation. Professor Yoshua Benjo, Scientific Director of Mila and Ivado. The signing ceremony will be witnessed by Dr. Quỳnh Trân, please come on stage, Mr. Bezat Babakani, Dr. Phong Nguyen, Mr. Lâm Phương, CEO FPT Canada, Mr. Stéphane Letourneau, Executive Vice President of Mila, and Mr. Frederick Lauren, Senior Director, Partnership of Mila.
Yeah, we would like to present to Professors Yoshua Benjo the pictures made by rice, Vietnam about rice. That's made by rice. The rice. And this is like a centers. Hồ Gươm is centers of Hanoi, and Hanoi is centers of Vietnam. Yeah, I would like to present heart of Vietnam to you.
Well, hello again, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation and the tech showcase. It's now time for the conference and panel sessions of the Canada-Vietnam AI Summit. We are privileged to have, we are privileged to have the participation of experts in the field who will shed some light on one of the most trending topics of the moment, the transformative potential of generative AI and its impact on businesses. Allow me to introduce the first expert, Mr. Jeremy Pinto, applied research scientist at Mila, who will provide us with an introduction to ChatGPT.
Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you all for being here today. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and this is quite a historic moment. So my name is Jeremy, and I'm an applied research scientist here at Mila. And today I want to take the time to introduce ChatGPT. So first of all, just to get a bit of an idea, who here in the room has already used ChatGPT? Yeah, isn't that incredible, right? A technology that has already impacted so many of us. So I think as it's really coming into our lives more and more, the point of today is to kind of explain what this actually is. So first of all, let's start with a bit of a demonstration for those of you who have not yet used ChatGPT. The way that these things work is you're essentially given a dialogue box, a chat bot, right? We can chat with it just like you could chat with your friends, and you can ask it questions and it just answers based on what it is that you asked. So here, a question that I asked it, I say, I'm about to give a presentation on the capabilities of ChatGPT, a generative model released by OpenAI. Can you explain it in a way that my grandmother can understand? And right away, this thing just starts printing out text, right? Really quickly. It almost seems like it's thinking as it's answering. And it'll say things like, ChatGPT is like a computer brain. It's been taught to have conversations and answer questions. Think of it like a smart person who can understand what you're asking and respond in a way that makes sense. And this is kind of, it seems a bit childish to answer like this, but this is kind of groundbreaking in the field of AI. It's very new that we're able to have these conversations with agents that can all of a sudden, based on the context, give us some answers that actually are coherent and make sense. So ChatGPT, what is this thing? Everything is in a name, right? So ChatGPT, let's try to unpack this name. First of all, the part chat. Chat in ChatGPT, what does chat mean? Essentially, it just means that you can chat with it, just like you could chat with any one of your friends. And in my opinion, this is what made this model go so viral. This is why this model exploded in popularity. Up until just recently, if you wanted to interact with the latest models in AI, you needed to have some kind of programming experience. You needed to be able to go and clone some code, read some instructions, run the models, or even train it on your own data. All of a sudden, anyone could just create an account and start chatting with this agent. So that's the chat part. That's why it's called ChatGPT. It's because it's really meant to interface with natural language. So what about the GPT part? This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So GPT is an acronym that stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. And we're going to unpack each and every one of those words one by one. So GPTs, they're a family of models that were proposed by OpenAI, and they were proposed already a few years ago. So generative, what does a generative model mean? A generative model essentially means any model that can create something from nothing. So in the case of GPT, these models can generate text given some kind of prompt. You give it a sentence and it completes the rest of the sentence. So this is what it means when we say a generative model. Now, a generative model doesn't have to be only on text. There exist many other generative models on images, on sounds, on voice. These days, you can have all sorts of different types of generative models, but GPT itself is a text-based generative model. Then we have pre-trained. What does pre-trained mean? It means essentially that this model was trained to learn more or less on all of the internet. So here I write lots of data. What does lots actually mean? We don't really know. Actually, in the case of GPT, it's not clear what data that models was specifically trained on. But for all intents and purposes, think any publicly available data that is available online. this model has seen during its pre-training. So it has this pre-training phase during which it learns how words work, essentially. And then once we use it, it's once it's already been pre-trained on all of this text. So generally speaking, when a model is pre-trained on a lot of textual information, we can talk about a large language model. So LLMs, you might have heard this term before. That stands for large language models. And GPT is one version of large language models, but there exist many other iterations of large language models out there. Finally, transformer. This is kind of the missing piece of the puzzle. This is what allowed these models to actually scale, to become huge, to get this understanding. We don't really understand yet why, but these models are core to their performance. So transformers are a very specific architecture of neural networks, and they were proposed back in 2017 by researchers at Google. They were first published at the NeurIPS conference. And this is what, we're not going to go into the details of how these architectures work, but this is what essentially allows these models to go from smaller models, research models, to these huge deployed models that as they get bigger and bigger and as they train on more and more data, just seem to get more and more understanding. So what is this thing? If we go read one of the blog posts from OpenAI, actually this was a blog post from GPT-2. They say GPT is trained with a simple objective: predict the next word given all of the previous words within some text. And this is really as simple as that. This is all that GPT does. You give it a bunch of words and it then has to predict the next word. So at its core, GPT is essentially a mechanical parrot. And this is really a good analogy to hold of these models. They just given a bunch of words, what is the most likely word to come next? And that's about it. Yet somehow, surprisingly, if we do this at scale, we start seeing these really interesting properties that begin to emerge. So let's take a bit of an example. So consider the following sentence from Mila's website. So if you go to mila.quebec online, we have an About Us page. You can scroll through it. And you can see here, I just took a screenshot from the page. And we can read the sentence here. Founded by Professor Yoshua Benjo, Mila is now the world's largest academic research center for deep learning. So this is part of the data that this model was trained on. So how does this actually work? When we're training this model, all we do is we just simply mask a word in the sentence. So here we mask the last word in the sentence, and we simply ask the parrot to complete the sentence. So we ask it, founded by Professor Yoshua Benjo, Mila is now the world's largest academic research center for, and the parrot has to somehow guess, after deep comes learning. Now, of course, when you first start training these models, they start producing kind of junk. But the more and more sentences you show them, the more and more they start understanding the relationship between words. If I've seen these past few words, it is most likely that this word comes next. And that's it. That's essentially all that goes into the training of GPT. Of course, there's lots of engineering that goes behind it as well. But at its core, we're really just tuning this parrot to guess the next word in the sentence. Now, if you do this long enough, these models eventually learn to complete any sentence in a realistic way. So here, I'm just going on the OpenAI playground where you can paste sentences and it'll just complete the rest. So this is the exact same sentence that we saw on the website, right? Founded by Professor Yoshua Benjo, Mila is now the world's largest academic research center for deep. And now I ask the parrot, please continue this sentence. And you can see the parrot does the job well. It says deep learning. Learning is the next word. But then it does something interesting, right? It didn't just learn completely by heart all of the internet. It actually just continues the sentence in a realistic way. And everything that you see in green on this screen, actually the parrot came up with. This is not on Mila's website. This comes from the synthesis of everything else that it's seen. So you can see that it actually doesn't end the sentence there. It continues the sentence. It says deep learning and artificial intelligence. It is based out of the University of Montreal and is a collaboration between University of Montreal, McGill University, HEC Montréal, and Polytechnique Montreal. Its mission is to explore and advance the science of deep learning and AI. So you can see it's just very coherent sentences. And everything that it says in the sentence actually is coherent and makes sense. So by just doing this over and over, these models just get a kind of connection between these words, an intuition, if you will, as to how to complete the sentence. But really at their core, just remember this, they're just giant mechanical parrots. So here we have a tweet from Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, the company that released these ChatGPT models. And this was back in December. And Sam Altman says, I'm a stochastic parrot and so are you. And he's being kind of cheeky here. Stochastic parrots are a term that's well used in literature to also kind of scrutinize these models and say they can be dangerous. And we have, for example, Professor Benjo here, who highlights some of these dangers that these stochastic parrots can have. But the point he's trying to make here is, well, perhaps we also do something very similar when we come up with ideas, when we're having conversations. Perhaps we're just really good at predicting the next word. Why is it otherwise that these models would be so good? Now, I tend to kind of disagree here. We had some mentions earlier on today about system 1 thinking versus system 2 thinking. I still believe that there are some missing fundamental pieces to this puzzle, but still, it is undeniable. These models are nonetheless really, really powerful by just doing the simple task of predicting the next word. So now let's give a little bit of history. How did we get to this ChatGPT model? One thing's certain, it's definitely not just OpenAI who came up with this model, and there have been lots of contributions over the different years. So here I'm going to list some of them. Of course, I can't go through all of them, but I thought it would be interesting to highlight some of the contributions from people here at Mila. So first of all, way back in 2003, Professor Benjo himself worked on a very important paper called Neural Probabilistic Language Models. And this was a paper that was very ahead of its time. Back then, we really thought of words as being atomic. And in that paper, that's when they suggested using words as embeddings, learning how these words should fit in a high dimensional space, which was very much against the conventional thinking at the time. And not just that, but also that these models should then predict the next word based on their semantic meaning. So this, I would say, kind of opened up the door to these kind of GPT models. Fast forward a few years, we have in 2015, the work from Dima Badano and one of the students of Professor Benjo. This work was called Neural Machine Translation by Jointly Learning to Align and Translate. And again, a paper that was kind of ahead of its time. At the time, they were not trying to come up with the GPT kind of model, but they did propose kind of the early beginnings of the attention mechanism. And in that paper, they actually described some of the first attention kind of as how we know it today. And for those of you who are not familiar with the attention mechanism, that is what drives these transformer models that I mentioned earlier on. They're really able to scale so well, in part, thanks to this attention mechanism. We then had an explosion after that. So in 2017, researchers from Google realized that actually this attention mechanism, when crafted very carefully into these transformer architectures, can scale really well to all sorts of new important problems. So before 2017, transformers did not exist. Everything was based on LSTMs, RNNs, a very different kind of architecture. And all of a sudden, the field of natural language processing explodes. There is a revolution with the transformer. We have models like BERT, models like Elmo. They really start dominating the field. And back as early as 2018, the first version of GPT was released by OpenAI, GPT-1. This model had about 117 million parameters, quite a big model for the time. And over the years, OpenAI has released different iterations of this model. So we had GPT-2 back in 2019, and GPT-3 in 2020, and up until recently in November, we've had ChatGPT being released. And this is the model that we have all learned to interact with, and we've all seen how capable these models can be. More recently, we've had kind of a Cambrian explosion of all sorts of large language models. So I'm not going to list them all, but here in the bottom of the slide, you can see a whole bunch of different other models here that are now being proposed, open source models, some more open source than others, let's put it that way. But ChatGPT is no longer the only large language model out there. It is, though, very much a force to be reckoned with, and a lot of these models still struggle to get the same levels of performance that ChatGPT has. Now, when it comes to these models, the size definitely does matter. The biggest difference in these models is their number of parameters. So I spoke about GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3. We're today at GPT-4. You could see here that I kind of drew them to scale the number of parameters that are involved. So GPT-1, I mentioned it earlier, 117 million parameters. At the time, that was considered big. Today, that's considered kind of normal for one of these models. We then had GPT-2 released by OpenAI a few years ago, and you can see here already 10x on the number of parameters, 1.15 billion parameters. And that's a GPT-2, that's when we started understanding really the kind of power of these models. They could do some impressive sentences, but not paragraphs. Paragraphs would start kind of going off the rails. Sentences were already starting to be pretty good. And OpenAI really went full steam ahead. They said we can just continue increasing the size of these models, increasing the data set, and we're going to get increased performance. And they were right. GPT-3, 115 billion parameters, and that's what's been driving ChatGPT. Today, we're at GPT-4. Big question mark. We actually don't know how many parameters are in GPT-4. That's a deliberate choice from OpenAI. They've decided not to make these details available anymore to us. Now, when it comes to the number of parameters, so far, it seems that simply increasing the size of these models just increases this performance. And so far, we have yet to see a limit to that. I'm sure that eventually we will hit this limit, but right now there's a whole field of study devoted to studying what's called scaling laws, where essentially you just continue upping the size of these parameters, and you can actually very predictably determine how well this model will perform. It's actually quite impressive. You can say, given GPT-1, given GPT-2, you can actually make predictions of how good GPT-3 should be, even how good GPT-4 should be. And it's not clear where we'll start seeing a stop to these trends. So that's why when you start seeing these letters, GPT-5 and et cetera, the bet is just that if we continue increasing these models in terms of number of parameters and the data that they're trained on, perhaps we're going to see more and more improvement in their performance. So I talked a lot about GPT, but I didn't really mention ChatGPT. So what's the big difference between GPT and ChatGPT? Because GPT itself was released back in 2020. So what changed between GPT-3 and ChatGPT? Well, there was still some innovation there. It's not like GPT is only predicting the next word. That is most of it. But when it came to ChatGPT, actually what they realized at OpenAI was that GPT was good at continuing sentences, but it was also really good at picking up on all the biases that are available online, all the toxicity, the racism, everything that you can think of that is not something that you would want to have in these models. These GPT models just pick up on simply because of the scale of what it is that we're operating on. I mean, think of the internet as you interacted with it on your day-to-day. Sure, you might have websites like Wikipedia that are great, but you also have some other forums that might not be just as great. And these companies just collect all sorts of piles of data. So you need some kind of way to make sure that this model is quote unquote aligned with the user, that it doesn't just give you a response of harmful content if you just prompt for it. So this is where there was some kind of innovation with ChatGPT. In this case, data sets of proper dialogue were collected. Essentially what that means is they hired lots of humans to go and interact with these models and not only instruct them how they should respond, but also rate how their responses were coming from these models. And OpenAI came up with this method that they coined reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF for short, which you might have heard of. And this is essentially how they get these GPT models to be helpful assistants. Those assistants that say, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, I cannot, blah, blah, blah. Or, as of my knowledge cut off in 2021, I cannot answer such and such questions. These abilities don't come natively from just predicting the next word. These abilities come from this fine-tuning step that they do through our LLHF. So ChatGPT versus GPT-4, we actually have very little technical details about how GPT-4 was implemented. They have released a report where they go extensively into evaluating these models, but from a researcher standpoint, we actually have no idea in terms of the number of parameters in these models, but also these models are supposed to handle images. We have no idea what they use to handle these images. And this was a very deliberate choice. Here we have a tweet that says, here's what we know about GPT-4. Essentially, all we know is that they used Python to implement it. So it's a bit of a joke, but it is a bit concerning from a researcher's perspective that we have less and less transparency into how these models actually operate. So now let's talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses for these models. And of course, for each one of these, I could go really into depth, but we're kind of limited with time. So I'm just gonna give an overview here. So some of these things that these models can be really good at: writing generic emails, cover letters, poems. I've tried it out. Now, don't automate your life away writing emails, but when it comes to writing simple emails, just like you wanna say no, but in a polite way, these things are incredible. Writing cover letters, I've tried it out. It's really crazy. They'll come up with some pretty good arguments for things that you might have never even thought of. Writing simple code, I use this a lot. It's really, really helpful. It actually makes me so much more productive in my day-to-day. I no longer need to go search for Google on how to do things. I can now ask ChatGPT, and actually the code is printed directly on my screen and in context for what I've actually asked it. Now, general knowledge, this is also really impressive. Think of it kind of like the first paragraph on a Wikipedia page. GPT is really good at memorizing those. And for everything that's kind of a broad general knowledge, it's pretty good at answering these things. It's also really, really good at summarizing documents. So for the researchers in the room, let's say if you have an abstract, they're often written in a very terse kind of language. If you take an abstract, copy paste it into GPT and say, summarize this as if I was 5 years old, it'll do a great job at summarizing it and dumbing it down in a way that is actually coherent and makes sense. Now, of course, none of this comes for free. ChatGPT has many, many weaknesses. And I wish I could go into more details of all of these weaknesses, but I think they're important to highlight. First of all, hallucinations. These models hallucinate a lot. Because they are mechanical parrots, because they just predict the next word, they don't inherently have this knowledge of saying, I don't know. They're just going to predict and predict away. And so when they don't actually know, we have no way of knowing that they don't know. And these models inherently have no mechanisms to know that they don't know. So for any of you who are experts in the room in whatever subject it may be, try it. Go ask ChatGPT a very specific question about your own subject, something you know really deeply about. And you will see that very early on, it'll start making stuff up. The first sentence might be all right. The second sentence might be a little bit off. And you will see that it won't tell you, I don't know. It'll just tell you whatever it might tell you. And it'll be convincing if you're not an expert, but it will not be convincing if you are an expert. Finally, something that's kind of surprising, arithmetic. These models are really not that good at math natively. It's not surprising when you understand these architectures, but it is surprising that the best AI in the world is actually not that good at doing some basic calculator kind of operations. So actually the first versions of ChatGPT were really, really bad at math. They've updated them since, and now they're kind of better at math, but still not that great. If you really want some good computation, you should really pass them on to some other engines that are really designed to do some good arithmetic. So that's it. Thank you very much. If you have questions, you can come see me later on. And I hope you enjoy the rest of this session.
Thank you, Mr. Pinto, for your sharing about ChatGPT. So to give us more deeper insights about this topic of ChatGPT, let me introduce Dr. Phong Nguyen and Dr. Christopher Kung Nguyen to share with us their findings. Dr. Phong Nguyen is FPT Software's Chief AI Officer, and Dr. Christopher Kung Nguyen is the founder and CEO of AI Thematic. And together, they will tell us how ChatGPT and LLMs are changing industrial landscape. So please.
Hello, everyone. So I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. And today it's my pleasure to have a co-speak with one of my best friend and my mentor in AI, Dr. Christopher Nguyen. So Dr. Christopher has an esteemed career that spans academia, entrepreneur ventures, pivotal roles in global corporations with focus on industrial AI. So as a CEO and co-founder of AI Thematic, he's currently developing Industrial Mind. And before AI Thematic, Dr. Nguyen was also the president and the CEO of Arimo Panasonic. And he also was the first engineering director for the launching of Gmail. Maybe everyone over here using Gmail, right, from Google. And he holds PhD from Stanford with a version that merged human knowledge with AI. Dr. Nguyen's focus is on trustworthiness, transparency, and industrial AI. So please, thank you very much for. So as for me, I'm Phong. I graduated from the University of Tokyo, and also I graduated my master in Carnegie Mellon University. I'm very proud to be the Chief AI of FPT Software, and at the same time, I am the visiting researcher in Mila. So together today, we really want to cross between academia and industry. So thank you, Jeremy, for a very wonderful brief about ChatGPT and how ChatGPT was born and how ChatGPT was created. So it gives you the background and the foundation to discuss a lot of interesting application for ChatGPT and LLM. And we will go through a lot of content, interesting topic today. So first, before my presentation, I would want to give some background about IT versus OT. So IT is dealing with data management, data processing on the virtual world, where you use a lot of connectivity to process the information. And OT deals with deal with physical entity in our real world, like you functioning a machine and how and a lot of know-how of human knowledge has been invested in the past many years for OT. So who is here is working in digital industry, which is IT? Can you raise your hand if you are working in IT? So your work depends only on virtual, right? And how many of you is working on physical industries? Like you're dealing with machine, you're dealing with operations, yeah. And lots of, I saw there's more people actually now focusing and shifting into IT. And we will discuss about that a little bit later. So come back to ChatGPT and LLM. I categorize their functions into 4 categories because that's what most of the organization is using ChatGPT for nowadays. After ChatGPT was released, there's a rush, like go rush. People are trying to use this technology for different purposes. I think one of the notable function is content creation, because it can create a lot of contents. So people can use it for marketing purposes. People can use it to write blog posts. People can use it for even have a plan for their advertisement and so on. And there's other purposes as well, especially in the domain of customer care, customer service, right? Because now you have a chatbot that's very polite. And even in some of the research paper, it shows even more empathy than the doctor itself. So communicate with external stakeholder or customer is very important to many companies. So companies started to adopt ChatGPT for that. And knowledge transfer. What do I mean by knowledge transfer? So organizations nowadays have accumulated a lot of knowledge, vast knowledge throughout many years of operation, and they document it in a different format, right? Maybe in chat, maybe in diagrams, maybe also in text. So imagine a junior employee, if they enter the company, how long does it take for him to know all of these, a lot of knowledge and a lot of process within the organization? So ChatGPT can be a senior employee who guide the junior employee. It can help the junior employee to answer any questions. Like, for example, when I join FPT, I just want to know, how do I get my new laptop? It's very simple, right? But if without any telling me that you have to go to IT, you have to go to apply this, I would not know. Or think about wealth management funding like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. So they have a lot of knowledge and know how to manage your wealth, how to trade, how to bring up the road your wealth. They would accumulate that throughout the history. And now they can fuse that into and digitize the knowledge into the large language model and let the chat GPT or large language model to incorporate those knowledge and transfer it to different people in the company. And finally, a very interesting use case is product assistant. What do I mean by that? It means that now you will interact with the product in a very different way. Before you use Excel, you use Word, you have to type and you have to insert the data and do everything, do all the analysis by yourself. But now think about that. You just tell the product, do something for me, do the analytics for me, create this presentation for me. I wish I could ask ChatGPT or large language model to generate this talk in like under 10 seconds. But actually it's coming into real life. Yeah, at the beginning, now it's already at the beginning stage, but it's going to be much more better in the future. So I will go one by one, a few couple of examples. So here is the advertisement launched by Coca-Cola using generative AI with ChatGPT and also especially GPT-4. They already have the vision capability, right? So users create real magic with the way how you prompt the model, and it will return to you the script, the plan, and even the images for the advertisement. And Duolingo is a company for education. Basically, they teach English to students around the world. And English is learned better in conversations, right? And now you can actually learn with ChatGPT in a very natural way. You have your personalized teacher, you have your own time, and you have your own buddy to practice with. I think it's changing the education landscape. And we have governments all over the world actually think about how to use ChatGPT too. So Iceland is a nation, a small nation, and they want to preserve their language because they are very close. English is going to be dominant in their country, so they really want to preserve the language. So they adopt ChatGPT in order to teach the young generation about their language. And finally, the product assistant is very useful for enterprise. So you can see on the left hand side, on the right hand side over there is the application from Microsoft that you will use for automate and you will give the product of Microsoft, like your Outlook, answer this email for me, or how to reply this email, or how to say no in a polite way, like Jeremy has mentioned. In Excel, you can say, I want to know what is the top 10 products that sold well last month. It will extract the value for you and return you the value instead of you go through the whole table and ask for yourself. And finally, I show a video how FPT, we also think a lot about how our company would leverage ChatGPT or large language model. So we created a senior employee, virtual senior employee in programming in order to help our junior employee with program and answer all the questions that he might have. Help you to write all the code and all the comments and documentation. You to translate it into multiple languages for the documentation. And we care about privacy, so that's why we developed our own model, and we never store any information of the project that we done, because it's a commitment with the customer. So I want to speak a little bit more about the optimisms about the technology. So in this chart over here, I present is different countries, is a different data point. You can see that they have Japan, China, Germany, Australia, United States, and South Korea, which is a data point. The vertical stands for the optimisms in technology. So how those people in those countries think about technology, how it can make impact to economics and their life. And on the horizontal axis, I have the GDP per capita, which is kind of a metric to say about the developing or developed countries in terms of economics. So we can see there's a trend here, right? That developed countries tend to have a higher optimisms for technology. They believe that technology could bring a better society, a better economic impact. And why the other, the lower income country, we have Mexico, we have Peru over there, Chile over there, Malaysia, they will maybe less think about the technology, the optimism of the country, because maybe the people, they have, you know, other tools, they still use another tool, and technology have not made many impact in their country. So I think I would like to end here in this optimism's note about the technology, and would like to Dr. Christopher to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Phong. Before I begin, some of you may be wondering why I'm sporting a turtleneck. I'm not trying to be Steve Jobs. I flew in from Silicon Valley, fully expecting a blizzard. This is the lightest wear I have, trust me. I have a trench coat at the hotel with a double layer. So with that out of the way, I'm glad that we coordinated and Phong ended here. By now, you should be actually asking the question. This is the Mila, right? We're talking about AI here. So what do you think that chart might look like if people are asked about AI, not just technology in general? Do you think it's exactly the same trend? How many people think it's the same trend? How many people think there's no trend? Okay, how many people think it's the opposite trend? Okay, and how many people don't think? Yeah, that's fair. So Stanford HAI organization recently published their annual State of AI, and in there they quoted a research from Ipsos, and Ipsos asked 5-6 questions of people resident in various countries, sort of the same thing that can comprise an optimism index. And I was curious about the same thing, so I decided to take that and just plot it versus GDP per capita. The first thing is that there's extremely strong correlation. It's the R squared is 67%. The second surprising thing is the exact opposite, right? And this is not a mistake. The noise is just not there. So this correlation is real. We don't necessarily know why. We can speculate as to why. And so I want to share with you my speculation and why I think it's relevant to today's discussion. So my speculation is the following. If you think about pessimism versus optimism toward technology, it's like, our job's going to be taken, right? Is it going to kill us all for the first time? And first world countries like the US tend to be very concerned about the automation away of lawyers and doctors, right? Many years ago, we say, oh, it's going to be the low-paying job, but now it's an intellectual takeover, supposedly. And so I think that can explain some of the pessimism. Whereas countries that are still making things, the physical industries, for example, this is a report from Asia. It says AI will significantly boost Asia's competitiveness. So basically, Asia can make the same thing for a lot cheaper. Therefore, there will be much greater value added. So I think that can explain a lot. And I actually see that in real life, because today I work in what I call industrial AI, the physical industry. What Phong referred to earlier is IT versus OT. And what you've seen in the past is that my last company was acquired by Panasonic. And even though my PhD is in semiconductor, for most of my career, I've been a digital guy, right? Gmail has 1 billion users, advertising, everything is digital in, digital process, digital out. In the 4 years that I had to be at Panasonic, I actually came to enjoy it. I learned to respect the work that my colleagues, mostly in Japan, have been doing for 100 years, life, critical systems, safeties, and so on. And it's, I reflect on the irony that in Silicon Valley, many of us, myself included, I would, say, we're thinking about safety for the first time. And we think it's like the greatest thought processes in history. People have been doing it for 100 years, you can learn from. So people talk about Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. I think the opportunity for that is autonomy, right? Specifically human supervised autonomy. And I think that's going to bring up marginally, that is the difference that it's going to make is going to be much more in the physical industry, percentage-wise, because the technologies that we have built up, the capabilities we've had to date, have been primarily enabling the digital economy. And so that sort of makes sense as to this other curve. I also look at the GDP numbers. I will share with you a little later. But let me share with you not just a vision. This is something that we're already doing with a sovereign oil and gas company in Asia. And let me see how I can start this video. But we're building a system for this supervised autonomy, right? That has trustworthiness, reliability, and everything built in.
And gas industry, a place where efficiency and safety are of utmost importance. Every day, engineers like Sarah and John work tirelessly to ensure smooth operations and optimal performance. In industries like John and Sarah's, where safety and reliability are paramount, industry pioneers want a solution that guarantees accurate and trustworthy output. Enter collaborative LLM systems. These systems harness the power of not one, but multiple LLMs called agents. When Sarah encounters a process failure, one agent engages in an interactive conversation to collect information, while another plans the necessary tasks to address the issue. The task planner forwards Sarah's issues to two specialized agents trained in valves and bearings to determine whether the observed issue corresponds to known failure modes of either component. To address the issue of inaccurate answers, the system incorporates checks and balances, including a validation agent to verify recommendations sent to Sarah are accurate, and a safety agent to ensure recommendations comply with company EHS guidelines. Together, collaborative LLM systems enable engineers and operators to unlock their full potential, driving the industry forward with efficiency, safety, and sustainability. Welcome to the heart of the oil and...
There's a couple of things, I think that's fine. There's a couple of things that are very counterintuitive about that video. I don't know if you caught that. One is that the agents, even though we call them LLMs, I actually call them small specialist models, right? These are, whereas the LLMs are hundreds of billions of parameters, these models are hundreds of millions. They're much smaller because they don't have to know everything about the world, but they do have to know pumps. Some have to know, pressure valves. Others have to know, gas processes. They have to be specialists in those things. And I was talking to Dr. Binh earlier. He caught on that insight as well on his own. The world is going to be, the interesting revolution here is going to be millions of specialist models, not 2 or 3 large language models owned by Microsoft or Google or the like. So that's sort of the counterintuition, number one. The second is, because of that, to me, the biggest revolution here is not one of intelligence. It is of communication, right? So I can talk more about that. So the hopeful view here, if you think about the GDP, I looked at US, the service industry is about 80%, industry is 20, Canada is about 70-30, Vietnam is 40-60. So I'm pretty optimistic that, the kind of thing that we're doing and what this new AI is going to do is actually going to close the gap. It's going to bring the making countries, the manufacturing countries up relative to the service economies. So that's my hopeful view, and I think you will take that away as something quite interesting to think about.
All right, so we actually have 10 minutes. If anyone has some questions or comments about the talk. I didn't expect us to have some free time, but.
Room is well aware of the bias in the models and the historical data sets that we train and the implications. I'm great to see Mila focusing on that area, but I'd love the comments. There's a lot of concern in that area, obviously.
I don't think we have enough time. I'll give my, I'll try to make it 60 seconds. First, from the pure machine learning view, is that bias is inherent, right? there has to be bias, otherwise systems don't work. But that's taking a technical view. Usually when we use the word bias colloquially, we mean the bad kind. The kind that prejudges, the kind that says, I'm going to guess that because 90% of this population has this attribute, I'm going to just guess 100%. And the error that you get into the 10% can be quite adverse to that subpopulation. So if you talk about bias like that, I think absolutely we train models to to go from past data. It's going to say there's a 90% chance, given all these observables, that this is a criminal. I think the outcome can be quite bad. So I think when people talk about when you use the term alignment or adjustments, we got to think about what I like to say is that there's a very big difference between impact and intent. We got to focus on the impact of our systems, right? Because the intent is now being removed from humans. In the past, when you discriminate against someone and you don't give them a loan, you can trace that to some human decision. But if bias is inherent in the system, you say, well, that's just what the machine does. It's not my fault, but the impact is the same. So I think, the way I think about it is that look at the impact and then readjust, the model is the model, but the system is something larger. You can certainly in fact, if you think about it, I think my last point on this that I like to think about is that we never want the world as it is. Everyone in this room is trying to want tomorrow to be something different, where models always reflect the data that they're trained on. So think about the difference between the world as we wish it to be versus the world as it is, and build in the human intent that controls for what we want the outcomes to be.
Very simple question, but maybe relevant. When you use a large language model, do you use native Vietnamese language or use a translator, and which one works better?
We actually have a lot of initiative to improve the Vietnamese language for large language model. So our team actually focus on the research that curating the Vietnamese data set and use and give that open source so that the large language model provider can actually train on. And so the one that you have just seen, the translation model, we actually build our own translation model for documenting the process of coding and to ensure the privacy and the security for our client as well as our work. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alexander.
I'd like to add something. As a former Google guy, I can tell you hands down, ChatGPT translates much better than Google Translator. Whether it's Vietnamese or Japanese, we can talk about why, but that is the case.
I was about to say this could be a question for Yoshua, but yeah, we'll have time to hear Yoshua speak. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I was thinking about Feng's comment about senior employees, and I'm not sure if I have to be concerned or I'm sort of in the middle, but we'll talk about this after. Now, it's a great pleasure to present the first panel discussion of the day, AI and LLMs, striking a balance between progress and responsibility. Our moderator for the discussion, Dr. Feng from FPT, and joining him, our esteemed panelists, Professor Benjo from Mila, Dr. Binh from FPT, and Dr. Leboutillier from Lignaris.
So thank you very much for joining us for the first panel discussions today. So our panel discussions title AI and large language models, striking the balance between progress and responsibility. So everyone maybe have the expectation that with a lot of progress, it comes with power of great power comes with a great responsibility. And does it have to be a trade-off, right? Does it have to be a sacrification or some things like that? So today, please join me with the esteemed guest speaker and panelists so that we can explore this. So we have Dr. Binh, who is a chairman of FPT Software. We have Professor Yoshua, he's a scientific director of Mila. And we have Dr. Alexander Le Boutillier, who is the, just one moment, please, the co-founder of Imaja, and at the moment he's with co-founder and partner of Linearis, the Responsible AI Health Fund, and he's also a board member of Mila. So please welcome all three panelists. So first of all, my very first question is a common question for all three of you. In your opinion, how we can balance this between the progress of AI and the responsibility that comes with it? Does it have to be a trade-off, or each of you will have a ratio in your mind to share? So please start with Professor Yoshua.
Well, it's a difficult question, and I think we should not think that we have at any time fully answered it. And we need to continue walking the line of systems that are useful and safe and protect the public. So let me try to be more specific here. First of all, we've done this in many other industries, right? There are lots of rules about how to build and how to drive an airplane. You need to test it very thoroughly. You need to document how the airplane is built. You need to document, what you've done to verify that it's not going to crash. And there's a lot of engineering there. Also, the airplane, pilots, they're certified, they have practiced for whatever huge number of hours, they're in good health. So we've put all kinds of safety devices. It doesn't guarantee that there is no airplane crash, but we've reduced it so much that now it's safer to take a plane than to take your car, per mile at least. That's a cheat. Okay, so I'm using this as an analogy, but we have to at least get to that level in AI. Right now, there's nothing. I mean, of course, different companies do different things, and that's good. But we need governments to set up rules that are going to be the same for all companies. Otherwise, it's not fair for the companies that are more responsible, right? And they're going to lose to the companies that are irresponsible.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that the government gets in there, and our role in academia, but also in companies, is to help the government figure out those rules that are both going to protect the public and also make sense from the point of view of implementation. That's the high-level answer I could give. We can probably discuss more, but I've talked already enough for now.
Yeah, I believe that as Mila, as one of the agency that really care about responsibility, so maybe responsibility come first.
Yes,
for you.
yes, yeah. Yes, because if we're careless, we may actually destroy the AI industry.
Yes.
There may be backlash and accidents or big scandals, and it's going to slow things down more than if we do it carefully and responsibly.
Understand. So, Dr. Alexander, so you are in healthcare and you are also working in AI. So you would both want progress and responsibility at the same time. So please comment, and what is your thinking about how do we have to trade off, or we can have both at the same time?
I would start by continuing the conversation that Dr. Binh had on happiness. Of course, it starts with the F. I think initially it was about the food. So if you eat and have a very bad diet, of course you will develop disease. And healthcare is not the absence of disease. If you're in good health, it's not necessarily that you don't have any disease. It's more than that. There's mental health. So to go back on the question, there's more regulation in your toothbrush that there are in AI currently. There's privacy law. There's some laws in AI, but certainly not enough.
Heard the analogy of there's more regulation in a sandwich. I mean, like, because food is heavily regulated.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear the toothbrush.
Yes. So to go back in healthcare, I was looking at the rate of mortality. My dad passed away of cancer, so I have a strong desire to make a difference in cancer, in high burden disease, in infectious disease. Of course, Yoshua, you have an interest in antimicrobial resistance. That might be the future pandemic. And in that area, I think we're not working fast enough. So at the same time, we need to make sure that there's strong regulation on anything that touches social media. We need to work faster in healthcare. Currently, it takes 17 years to bring a new drug to market. I see things in research that could potentially save life, even in colorectal cancer, in lung disease, in liver cancer that affect Vietnamese, but also Canadian people. I don't want that to take 17 years. I want to shorten that. But at the same time, what you don't want is to introduce a treatment that will harm or a diagnostic that can kill you. People say, how can you have a diagnostic tool that can kill you? Let me explain. If you have a diagnostic that tells you, oh, you might have a nodule on your lung, and then it's a false positive, and you go and you do biopsy, like you pierce the lung, you do other investigation. Of course, this could lead to unforeseen consequences. So it's very important to have the right kind of data in healthcare and understanding the level of bias that you have. In healthcare, when we do validation study, we refer to the UK Biobank. UK Biobank is very well known. But I'm sure that Canadian, we don't eat the same. We don't have the same genomics. And probably Vietnamese as well. You're not UK genomics.
Not as much fish and chips, fortunately.
Exactly. So I think every country should have their own biobanks. So Vietnam, you have your own biobanks.
Yes.
But you should have quality data for which AI could develop diagnostics that are specific to you and treatment that might better work for your population. Clinical trials are done in Japan, US, mostly of the G7 countries, not enough in Canada. So when you get the treatment in Canada or Vietnam, probably it's not going to work as well as the people in the clinical trial.
Thank you. So you think it's important to have regulation as well as the technology have to catch up as well?
So AI safety, and I have the expert on my right. In healthcare, it's really important. So there's only 2 countries currently that allow an AI algorithm to learn from its mistakes. So you introduce a technology in health, you know that technology will not be perfect. Maybe it has the 90% accuracy. And of course, the model will make errors. So logically, you want the model to learn from those errors, but at the same time, does not degrade the performance of the clinical trial for which it was approved. So only US and Japan have that currently. I've spoke to Canada, they want to be the third by December, maybe they will be late, but like we need to advance. Like if you have a new technology that makes errors, the technology should autocorrect itself.
Yes, thank you very much for your opinion. So Dr. Binh, what is your opinion? Professor Joshua put responsibility and safety first, why Dr. Alexander is more in the middle. You want both to better motor, but also better regulations.
Yeah, I actually have a very different opinion about that. I think progress first, regulation later. Why I said first, the technology inventions, that's neutral. The matter is purpose. How to get to manage the things, we need global agreements. And in the past, Doha negotiations take years, decade years, and not agree till now. And if you regulate in one country, how to regulate another one? And therefore, that is a kind of responsible people working on AI and not irresponsible people in AI. That is some kind of complications. If I look back for histories, the chain reactions was invented in 1933. In 1945, we know certainly atomic bomb. But later, in 1951, we get atomic energy. And today it still works. And only in 1968, we have international, just few countries agree on that, about against atomic bomb. That means 33 years, 35 years, regulation come up. From inventions, that's history of people. And therefore, I think most important is responsible people have to master that's AI much more faster and more fast in comparison to irresponsible. And only on this way, we can make the world better. If you are late, you cannot save the world, even if you are very responsible. And therefore, I think that is a kind of history. That is about practice. That is about a global competition. That's about grand politics, whatever. So many issues we have to think of. Regulate now or later on. I think from my perspective, I would like the Canadian government support you and less regulation, let you move far away. And then you can cooperate with Vietnam, yes, and then you should protect the world. That's my point of view.
So actually, the Canadian government is working on a law that may pass this year if all goes well. So there will be regulation in Canada, and I don't think that it's going to slow down research or innovation. It's going to make the Canadian public, safer and more protected. Also, there are already existing proposals for principles of AI regulation that have been put out, for example, by the OECD, and that have helped drive the European Union. So the European Union is already very close to having a very comprehensive legislation And there was a G7 meeting, the last one, where they agreed to set up a committee of the ministers from each country to work on guidelines. So it's not, before you get a treaty, people agree on principles. And by the way, before whatever it was 60 something you mentioned for the nuclear, in the 50s, there was a first treaty which was not as strong, but the main contenders like Russia and the US were there. I think it's not black and white, right? You can have regulation, but we need that regulation to move slowly as we understand better the dangers, the bad use cases. In fact, what is going on here in Canada, which I like very much, is the government has proposed what's called the principles-based regulation. What it means is that the law itself just puts very general ethical guidelines, and then within the government there will be an organization that will manage the actual details of the regulation. And the advantage of this separation is that the regulations can be quickly adapted. So when something bad happens, or when we foresee something that could be an issue for the public, the government doesn't need to change the law, because changing the law takes a lot of time. The different parties need to negotiate. And if a party changes, there's an election, it's a mess. I mean, it takes a lot of time. So that separation gives more agility and more independence from the political, changes.
So you mentioned about Dr. Binh. I think I just clarified, Dr. Binh. So you mean that we progress, so that, for example, we have like police AI, right, to catch the maybe bad things that might be an AI system.
I'm talking about the competition between the responsible people, good-hearted people who contribute for happiness of people, and irresponsible people who would like to dominate human beings, etc. Let's think back. Actually, it does time competition between United States, Germany,
Russia, yeah.
Hitler, led by Hitler, and Stalin. And if the war not finished right time, Hitler got atom bomb before anybody. And then what's the future of humankind? If Hitler got atomic bomb first, before US and Russia, what's happen?
But wait, the regulation that we're talking about is not going to prevent research. It's not going to, what the regulation is going to do is mostly protect the public when these systems are deployed. All of the regulations that are currently in place. So it's a very different scenario. Now, there is also a reason, so there are two more things to say. So one is, if there are companies or countries that are more responsible and others that are less responsible, then having no regulation or less regulation is an advantage for the irresponsible ones, because the responsible ones will be more careful and will do things more slowly, right? Whereas if we have a treaty or if we have laws, then we level the playing field, right? So the irresponsible players do not have an advantage because they have to follow the same rules. Everybody follows the same rules. And that's what we do in society in general, right? Otherwise, the big guys always win, even if they do like bad things. So I think actually it's going to better protect the responsible people to have a set of rules that we agree on together.
So international level.
International and national, because within each country you have different companies. It's the same competition there too.
One element, if I may, that I feel is lacking more and more is ethical course. So when the next generation, we don't teach them to be ethical being. We don't teach them the right value at school. So for me, it's very ground rooted to, yes, have regulation, but in the first place, if the majority of people behave well, that's good. The other thing is the genie is out of the bottle. So now we have genies, and each of you have a bottle, and you can essentially make a wish. Like you ask something to the genie, like, I would like this genie, please produce me a pill that will prevent me from dying of cancer. And you all saw movies of genie, and when you don't make your wish carefully, they're sub-objective, and maybe those sub-objective are not aligned with you. So in that case, the genie will give me a cyanide pill, I'll eat the pill, I'll die, but I would not have died from cancer. So right now, the genie, I think, is the bottle is still system one. So the genie, like we ask the question, we get the response, so we can control that. But the difference between maybe the next system two, the next bottle, the genie will control itself. So the genie can press the button. We didn't have that kind of technology with the atomic bomb, like somebody needs to press the button. Now with, hopefully.
The atom bombs cannot make decisions by itself.
So that's the next genie that we need to regulate.
We can foresee AI systems that can take decisions by themselves. And I think we need to be very careful there.
From my point of view, that's really is a new world created. We don't know, we live in the physical or this kind of digital, it's some kind of blur.
And hologram.
And therefore, yes. And therefore, I would like to turn back to the human. Okay, I don't care what's the digital you create, but I would like to judge what you do for human. If you serve the happiness of people, okay, no problem. But if not and hurt people, and then
that's why we have laws. I mean, that's the purpose.
Law, but we should use our legacy law. We should judge. That's good or not good? Violate or not violate? That's we use human assessment, not much stopping or regulate activities in development of the AI technology.
I mean, I can understand that sometimes government can be very bureaucratic and slow the progress. So maybe we should work on that. How do we get more efficient governance that's more responsive to the real problems and not ones that are made up in the mind of someone, and also based on scientific evidence, so that we take into consideration the reality of companies and people, users, and so on. It's difficult. It's a lot of work to craft such regulations, such legislation, and then to implement that in a way that's going to be efficient. And that's why, governing is difficult. It's not an easy job, but technology can also help.
Because at the same time, and I'm referring to Dr. Christopher's presentation, we see an acceleration in the revolution. So before it was 100 years, the next one was 50 years. Now the next one is at 25 years. Like you always tell me, we don't have crystal balls, so we don't know, but there's a trend of acceleration. So if government is slow, that's not good for democracy. Government should be able to adapt to the evolvement of technology. So maybe AI can help build regulation faster that could predict and have simulation of what will be the impact of those regulations.
Yeah, but even in day-to-day things of how regulation is like monitoring and documentation, you want it to be as smooth and digitized and simple as possible.
Yeah.
Dr. Binh, I want to understand, you always say happiness, how healthcare is important. How do you see healthcare progression? Because we're all getting old. There's a lot of disease that happen as we get old. The cost of that is skyrocket. And I see that's like, we don't have a solution for that.
Yes, we are facing with very challenging issues. Population get age, and we don't have enough resources, don't have enough of infrastructures, don't have enough the medical care and medicine, etc. And how we think we should change situations. First, from the COVID pandemic, that's the very first time no healthcare system should be support when the million of people get infected. And therefore, they have to stay at home. And who cares for them? And FPT got the very first ideas to use bot to serve millions of people for free. We're calling them, asking, chatting, how the oxygen level, and give advisor, delivery equipment to home, and so on. That's a lot. And that's give us a new ideas. Why we don't take care of what we did for industry? I cooperate with the GE when the Binh Ruth invents a kind of digital twins and predictive when the machine should be get out in advance weeks. Why we don't have IoT for health? And we start to piloting to get the wearings, the things, chatting, and we try to bot take care. We have some kind of speakers with camera, and with that we have data. We should predict what's going on, and we advise what medicine to take, when to take, when go to bed, what to do exercise, and
we only think about our health when we're getting sick. That's the problem.
Too late.
And it's too late.
Vietnamese saying, always ngừa bệnh hơn chữa bệnh.
Preventive is better.
Yeah. Always Vietnam care. Long. We take kind of a lot of ups in order to think the next 10 years I'm okay.
Yeah, preventing is better than treating, right? That's what
it's cheaper and it goes to the happiness.
And the cost, we think about $5 per month for elderly people. We think it this way.
So regulation is like prevention.
Yeah.
You pay a little bit each time and you avoid big problems later.
Yeah. Maybe Vietnam still have the labor chief cost.
Right.
We can deliver medicine to home with equipment for free. For free, because for us it's not much cost. The cost of medicine is most important. Deliver. FPT have largest pharmacy network in countries, and now we have data. We know when the patient need what and when and so on, and we do that. A lot of free, and the cost very cheap.
I have these questions before we move to another panel, because this is very important for the future as well, because we have future generation. And we know that large language model and AI is changing our world very quickly and very impactful. So how do we prepare? How do we change as education to prepare for the future? And because I know that all of you here are educators, and I think many people are really curious, how should I adapt to this new world? So we start with Professor Yoshua.
Sure. This is a great question. It's very probable, as you say, that we are going to be seeing many changes in society, technology, markets, economy. Hopefully no more pandemics, but who knows? It could happen. And these changes can be big perturbations, big changes in the job market that could be creating a lot of misery as well. So I think in terms of education, instead of trying to follow the industrial model of, we make students, like we make a uniform set of products, we should think of making more complete human beings that have developed a lot of basic knowledge and learned to learn so they can adapt quickly to the changes that are coming.
Learn to learn.
Yeah.
Dr. Alex?
If some of you have read, I think the book is called Simple Economics of AI. There's an image of a steam mill that produced cotton. And this was the time where electricity was happening. So people were thinking, oh, maybe we should replace our steam motor by an electric motor. So the gain was really marginal, and electricity did not went up. It only went up when people thought about, let's redo the factory to have all small motors everywhere. So essentially to distribute electricity and to introduce with Henry Ford, like the plan that we know out of today. So I think the opportunity for the next generation is not to use AI to replace or augment every processes. Human would think in sequence, like I do step 1, then I do step 3, then I do step 4, and so on. So if you try to put AI in every boxes, we've been trying to do that in healthcare for the last 10 years. There's about 500 medical devices as a software approved in the US currently. Has it changed healthcare dramatically? I think the increment was there, but it did not transform healthcare. So next job, the processes that we have in current job will be different. Change the process. There's a lot of things that you can do in prediction. So my advice is to use personalized education. You can have machine that will teach individual people what they need. So the face-to-face interaction that you have with the teacher is really based on your need and not an average need that typically goes down. And the last point I want to make is if you want to think about new jobs, don't think about AI in the way that human process data. We talked a lot about text processing, imaging processing, but machine can process much more than those type of data. In healthcare, there's metabolomic, genomic, that humans have difficulty to grasp. Machine will understand those type of data. So in every job, there's maybe thermal imaging that is useful, or ultrasound that machine will understand. So think about the metadata and the data that is not currently used in your profession, but machine will be able to tap onto those data and transform the whole process.
Yeah, Dr. Binh, Josh, it will be.
Talking about educations, actually, people, our generations, that's the only way. For me, for example, education studies about my future. Let at least enough food for and clothes. I have to study hard in order to get enough food and to change my life. But now its situation totally changed. And now we have to ask, what kind of education should be? We should rethink about education itself. Let's talk about the engineers. When the first revolutions, we create the engine, and we need to educate people to make engine or repair engine, and we name them engineers. Yeah. And what are we going to do next? What the bots we go to do? We have to imagination the kind of who do what. And for me, I think education for next in future should be for just two purposes. If in the past, education to know, no need of that, forget. To know, let ChatGPT do it. Just two functions the human should do in future. Innovate, to change the world and to make other people happy. That's that. Two functions should be changed to education. Nothing more.
Absolutely. So, yeah, thank you very much. So we need people to innovate. So thank you very much on that note. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, many thanks to our panelists for a very rich exchange. And for those who don't know, FPT has a network of universities, so they're very well positioned to in the education sector. And I myself use a lot the pharmacies when I was in Vietnam. So, yeah. Well, let us continue with our second panel, LLM, Rethinking the Boundaries of Innovation. This one will be led by Jérémy Pinto. And please join me in welcoming the other panelists. Dr. Jean-François Delille, Manager AI Innovation at CAE. Mr. Emmanuel Rochette, AI Specialist at Intel. And Mr. Lam Phuong, CEO at FPT Canada.
Thank you very much, panelists, for being here today. So this next panel will actually be kind of different from the first panel that we heard. And we're going to focus more on the opportunities, more in the short term, but also in the longer term of LLMs. So to open up this panel, I'm going to start with my first question, which is, currently speaking, with LLMs, like we saw ChatGPT, all these possibilities, have you been exploring, first of all, how to integrate them into your businesses? And if you already have, how have you been integrating them? And I think we could start perhaps with FPT, because we saw the examples of Docify. So maybe you could speak a little bit to that in the product development.
Yeah, as a technology service provider, of course, we have to experiment with the latest thing. So we play around with ChatGPT and other similar LLM technology. So first, we use this for our own need, like Phong just demonstrate recently about using ChatGPT to help improve the productivity of our developer, for example. So we don't have a lot of data yet, but some sample we can like triple the performance of developer, right? So helping them to write code and do some code translation, for example, like helping migrate the system from very old COBOL code to Java, for example. And then we also using ChatGPT for HR screening, for example, helping screen the CV because we hire like thousands of people in a month. So that's very important to improve the productivity. But also we also start seeing our client also want to experiment with that, some with very small initiative like using ChatGPT to do front end for their knowledge base system, so retrieve the information in like semantic manner. So we're also doing that. But I see a lot of different way of.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I think improving productivity seems to be a common theme. So, and we'll get back to that. So thank you. Maybe Jean-François, if you can.
Yeah, so at CAE, we knew that large language model in NLP would be very disruptive. Like, that's why we build collaborations with academics and EVADO members as an example. So we run multiple experimentations with the academic partners. And we discovered that there are two big categories of use case that where we need to manage differently. So they're the corporate functions, how we're going to improve the employee performance in engineering pipeline, in training content creation process, in HR, procurements. But the other part is at CAE is our flight training product and services. And we have to remember that we are in the critical path for flight safety at CAE. We're training or we're programming the most critical systems in flight operations, the pilot. So we cannot manage your experimentation the same way that the other IT. So we choose to have a two-step approach, having experimentations on critical systems, measure, test, put result in front of our user, collect feedback, and have a very rigorous approach with that kind of process. We're strongly regulated at CAE. We need to follow standard from the federal administrations in aviation, so from the European Aviation Safety Agency, and we need to prove every steps that we're compliant with those regulations. But with the corporate functions, we got like extremely good results. We were able to build information search strategy in engineering, deep research semantic that can understand, help our engineer finding solutions quickly from past previous history. So we improve significantly our efficiencies. You know, in flight training, we like to play with our big toy, the flight simulator. So we also test bringing AI co-pilot in the cockpit. In virtual reality and our full flight training device, we bring a virtual instructor that is able to teach and bring adaptive learning concepts in real time. The result is fantastic, but we are very, very, very prudent going in productions with those feature sets for the risk that can be associated.
And we'll get into that because I'm sure there are a lot of, especially for critical systems like in aviation, we have to be very, very careful with how we deploy these systems, going back to regulations, of course. And maybe Emmanuel, you could talk a bit for
Yes.
Intel.
So at Intel, we design chips to use in computers. So one very interesting project that we have is to use generative AI to design the chips and to optimize, with AI. But other than that, as a chip company, I personally work with customers, the biggest customers that Intel has, and they are all trying to do something with AI, generative AI. It's not always mature projects, I would say. It's more experimentations. But just the fear of missing out on the opportunity of generative AI, they're pouring money into this, as you can imagine. So yeah, I think a lot of opportunities will emerge. It's not clear yet, except for maybe chatbot for many of those. but just the fear of missing out is what drives all the investment right now.
Awesome, thank you. And so maybe we can go back to Jean-François. I would like to speak a bit more about some of the challenges or some of the risks that you're facing when implementing these models and that you're thinking about as well when deploying these models eventually. How do you even start dealing with that and what have you seen already?
We talk about the critical system. We're in the critical path. So if I want to be more precise, we need to pay attention of the piece of knowledge that we introduce into the brain of the pilot during the flight training operations. So ChatGPT, we discovered that is a great challenge for training content, and training content creation of our learning material is subject of this process in ChatGPT generation. So we need to put the right analysis, the right experimentations that allows to understand the impact. You know, no hallucination is allowed when it's time to inject piece of knowledge into the head of our critical systems, that is the pilot. So we need to have a kind of two steps, an incremental approach, and be very rigorous regarding that aspect. So that's why we're working with regulators in commercial aviation, FAA, EASA, but we also in the military sector, they have the same concern with NATO. So we're collaborating with them to ensure the basic principle use of AI.
The last thing we'd want is our co-pilot to hallucinate. That's for sure.
Yes.
So, Mr. Fong, going back to you, we mentioned a little bit earlier, some of the examples that were shown was maybe how you could generate doc strings on your own code bases internally. We talked about senior developers, chatbots, but what about some of the complications that come with dealing with closed source models, sending over all this data? What have you already started putting in place for that?
So we see the risk of accuracy, right? So sometimes the model generates something that not usable, right? So we have to spend a lot of time to like double check, to do like post processing to ensure that the things that produced can be usable. So that's the things that we see right now, but the benefits still greater than the risk. So that's why we still go ahead. And we see some other risks that related to these technologies that we might depend on just a few vendors, right? So the brain of everything is located in like OpenAI hand or something. They can just turn off sometime and everybody is out brain. And so that could be there's open source models that we can try, but the quality of that is not yet comparable with whatever the OpenAI is coming up right now. So that I see another risk that we need to take in consideration.
Thank you. And continuing on that thought, maybe to Emmanuel, have you seen maybe more push from industries to try to really train their own models, their own large language models, proprietary even, and the challenges associated with that?
So I would say, so no big companies wants to share their data with other companies, so they have to train their own models. But they don't always have the technical expertise or the resources to do it from scratch. So there's a big push, I think, to have those models coming from the open source ecosystem. And you had a question about the risk. Well, now with this industry push to have more and more large language model coming into open source, is that everyone can now access those models, even the bad actors. So that's one of the big risks that we're seeing right now, is this. And the industry pushes for not closed model, but open source model.
Yeah, I mean, myself as a researcher, I personally much prefer the open source models, especially because they allow scrutiny. And we had mentioned earlier in the crowd questions on bias, right? These open source models, at least we can study them. So that's actually maybe a good way to segment in a follow-up question. How has open source maybe helped out some of your different industries? Are you trending towards open source models? Are you paying attention to the different models that are coming out? Maybe we could start with
Yeah, I see a mixed reaction from the industry. Or some they are very acceptable for applying the open source model, right, for trial, because people might like come to the link with the previous panel discussion about regulation, everything, right? So while waiting for the regulation, they want to experiment something. So open source is a cheaper way to get on board and learn about the trend, right? So that I see that, but for some companies, they just, okay, let's go with the top. So we see the like half of.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. And maybe next question is, in general, so we spoke a lot about regulations in the first panel, but currently we know that there are really not many regulations surrounding AI. So how do you currently deal with this lack of regulation? And in a way, does it stop you, or do you see a way forward to move on more regulations? Maybe we can start with the.
At CAE, we're under regulations for decades now. So it's normal for us to be under that circumstances. But with the AI now bringing new constraints, we suggest having an agency that is regulating AI specifically, a kind of AI police. I think that we mentioned that earlier, oversee the usage of large language models. We see that also antitrust rules shall be there to prevent AI manipulations on market, on stocks exchange, and other critical on the economics.
Do you think, in a sense, it's the role of the government to put in these regulations? And should they act quicker, perhaps, than they've been acting?
It's an ecosystem for me, like between the government, between the researcher, between standard working groups. In Europe, we see that they are the European Union Ethic Act that produced the AI Act. And our regulator, the EASA, European Aviation Agencies, they base their principal use of AI from those groups. We're participating at CAE to those standards groups and to ensure that the flight safety remains and that our training content creation is also well regulated to avoid the co-pilot hallucination.
Thank you. And then maybe now a more general kind of question. So what kind of safeguards are being put right now in the immediate to mitigate some of the current dangers like bias in all of these models, but especially when you're a company putting in these models into production and they start hallucinating or they start representing you without a human in the loop? How do you make sure that these models are aligned with your company values? Maybe we could start with Mr. Fong.
Yeah, I think as Asian, right? So like from the presentation from Dr. Nguyen, I'm more optimistic about AI and very excited about AI. And we should not see AI from the dark angle, right? It's not always that it can cause harm to human or something. There's certain, if you apply AI for public facing, you can influence millions of people. So that's the area that need to be regulated, right? But if we use that for internal the company, so like help them to improve the productivity, helping them to search for information better. So I think we can just go on in, right? So why we need to wait for the regulation, right? So the technology is good enough right now, and the impact scope, and we can control the output of the AI, right? So we don't see any problem of applying AI.
So at CAE, we realize that because we're high critical systems, that we need to put in place a kind of SWAT of risk management around AI. So we created a group of AI policy composed of our lawyers, our scientific, regulatory affair, as well as our ethic groups, in order to ensure that we create a kind of task force that will put the basics to prevent risk that we can have. But it's important with large corporations like CAE that have more than 13,000 employees that we also control our domestic usage. The employee that can use ChatGPT, leak training content, use that in flight simulations without informing the technical authorities. So we communicate and train our employees with formal communication in order to put the proper barrier and not only barrier, but also educate on the impact. We see that this domestic information is as important as any kind of regulation that can put in place. If you have a police, but you're your citizen is not aware of the law and the impact is useless.
The next question will be for Emmanuel. So it might be a bit more of a speculative question, so I apologize for that. But other than LLMs, have you been seeing a trend that industry is really excited about right now? Or is there maybe some applications of LLMs that are not just chatbots that you see an immediate or short-term interest from various players in the industry?
Yeah, I would say so. Maybe not just LLM, but generative AI in general. I cannot name the companies, but they are really, really working to generate complete video games and movies. They're still far away from that, to be honest. But that's something to me that even in maybe like 10 years, where you would have something like Netflix that just knows you very well and would just make a movie just for you. That's something, the long-term goal of those companies is this, or have a video games that just matches exactly what I want to do right now because they know me so well. That's something that I find interesting. It is not, we're not there yet, just to be sure, but this is they're investing in that direction for sure. And again, for me my role is to optimize that kind of workload. So I'm just very excited to see this happening more.
Yeah, and maybe for Mr. Fong, question for you. So we had this mention earlier about this idea of having millions of agents, each specialized in their own little subfield. Is this where you see the future of FPT investing really in having many different agents that are highly specialized?
Yeah, we are a service company, right? So we serve our clients, so we follow the demand of our clients. So I see that right now with ChatGPT, it's a dialogue system. It's one-off, you ask the answer and everything. But the new trend of automation is very, very interesting and scary too, right? So I play around with AutoGPT, for example, so it can write a code by itself. It does research by itself. So that I see that a lot of application of that can be in IT service management, for example. So you can replace a IT guy with like AutoGPT agent that can go out and search to solve the problem, and then you can. So that's a lot of new trend, but it's too early right now to say definitely it is good or not, and regulation is needed or not. So, but we very eager to try that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's probably too early for these kinds of systems, but it's still very interesting, right? This ability for these systems now to plan ahead, to reason. We've been seeing all sorts of different publications and methods to try to incorporate this reasoning and not just predicting the next word, but actually dispatching in a sense to many different iterations of ChatGPTs or LLMs to go ahead and plan these tasks. It's impressive, and I'm excited to see what's in store in the short term with all of these models. Well, on that note, I think, okay, we still have a few more minutes. All right, excellent. Okay, so maybe we could talk a little bit more. Let's say, going back to the example of having the chatbot directly in the cockpit, I'm very curious. So is that really more from a training perspective, or is the idea long-term to really in flight have a co-pilot literally be there assisting the pilot?
There are new trends with those new eVTOL, vertical and takeoff and landing vehicles. They're lights, they're electrics, and they're single seat. So if we go from 2 pilots to 1 pilot, we need to bring some automations and safety measure. And we see that AI can play a great role in ensuring flight safety. So we talk about co-pilot hallucinations, but if we reach a minimum level of safety with those systems, it can help. It can increase the flight safety with those kind of flight operations. So at CA, we invest in those experimentations to bring the AI co-pilot or a human assistant. And we're not doing that alone. Regulators also have a tight calendar, like 2025, 30, and 35, that manage the insertion of automation in flight cockpit. We made interesting test. So we took a flight simulation at 60 Hertz, and we inject at 60 Hertz the context of the flight situations to ChatGPT. And during a practice, we launch malfunctions, we create different hazard, and we ask the co-pilot, please, during the current context, like engine failure, give me the appropriate checklist. It gives the appropriate checklist. So it's, however, like it's very difficult to assess the quality right now because we can see that maybe some 85% accuracy on this checklist can be as good as a human can bring, but we cannot afford giving that responsibility yet for a machine. We need to still experiment and test more.
Yeah, and that's on that point. It brings up another question: is do you ever see in the future, within your different respective industries, a future where these chatbots are responsible for errors, or who is responsible once they make these errors? How do we give a sense of responsibility on the deployment of these systems? Is it the engineers who put them in place and said they should have been safe, but in fact they weren't? Is it that we should always have someone overseeing these models? How do we cope with that from an industry perspective? Maybe we could start with Mr. Fong.
Yeah, I see that there's analogy with autonomous drive system, right? If the car hits somebody, so the owner of the car will be responsible, right? So I think it's the same thing like for AI system. So the owner of the system should be the person who ensure the safety and ensure the quality of the system. Yeah.
But then that's an interesting analogy because for self-driving cars currently as they are, someone needs to always be holding the wheel. So do you see it that someone should always be, in a sense, holding the wheel of these models? Should there always be someone monitoring at all times what these models are doing?
I'll wait for Dr. Benjo to come up with the regulation.
Maybe, let's see. Do you think that in the case of the pilots, for example, who will be aided with these co-pilot type of technologies, are they still always responsible? Because you mentioned, for example, your model is going at 60 hertz. That's much faster, probably much faster than a human could handle, especially with all the error messages popping in. Who's responsible?
The answer is easy right now. Even with the human, the captain is responsible of the flight. Like the captain hold the ship and until it's landing is responsible of everything. So pretty simple.
Yeah, fair enough. And maybe just going a bit away from LLMs, but still in the same domain, multimodality is more and more a hot take, having images, but also videos, streaming audio, etc. Do you see LLMs evolving in that direction, or have you been experimenting internally with these kinds of technologies? Maybe Emmanuel, I don't know if you have some partners or you can talk about some of that.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to very pinpoint what my customers are doing. But yeah, so I think the what I was saying about creating a movie is something that you will have generation of images with generation of scenarios. Again, it's something that I see one very big customer experimenting with right now. It's something I'm personally very eager to see.
I've seen some generated videos and they're a bit terrifying.
I mean, this is getting very good, yeah.
All right, well, we have about 1 minute left, so I think it's probably a good time to start wrapping up. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for participating today. This was a really constructive conversation, and thank you, everyone. And Fred, maybe would you like to come say close?